We got Lavell Malloy, the second, of course, CEO and co-founder of Bragg House, stock symbol TBH, in the house with us, who has completely revolutionized what I think about puncturepreneurs. He's one of the smartest guys I know. I call my daughters puncturepreneurs also because they're 30 years younger than I am and they're 40 years smarter than I am. Lavell, good to have you, man. Great to see you. And I want to talk about, real quickly, for the folks that didn't catch you last year, real quick, because the big names like Amazon and Walmart spending fortunes trying to figure out Gen Z, and you guys are saying that they're going about it all wrong. You solved the problem. Talk about that from the very beginning, which was the first interview question we had with you when you first came on the air with us a few weeks back.
Well, thanks guys for having me back. Happy New Year, everyone. So what we did is, we didn't just build a gaming platform, we built kind of an adoption engine. So we proved that the gaming mechanics, competition, rewards, all that stuff, we could really use that kind of stuff. And then we leverage what we think was the most important mechanics, community. And we think that's an asset class that most people is very underused. And we think it's probably one of the best asset classes on the balance sheet. So we used that community, we built that first, and that was able to drive engagement really at a fraction of cost than all of the traditional ads put together.
Lavell, you guys talked about, from the very beginning, the thought about culture to capital. Talk about that model and what you guys are doing in 2026. I know that's leading the charge for you guys as a business.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I'm glad you brought that up because, we think culture is really just the most valuable thing. So, we really started with that. Again, we focused on a platform that, revolved around college sports, revolved around gaming, revolved around social interaction. And we used that culture to really build first and then have that kind of, have that first. Once you had that, everything else kind of fell into place. So right now, obviously, people understand the merger we're doing. We aren't even pivoting from that mythology. We're taking that same mechanics. We're taking one of the largest communities, but then we're applying financial rails to a global community. So really, it's the same mythology of really taking this community that's already built in community and really putting these rails around them.
And Lavell, this is kind of a Q1 strategy for you guys for 2026. Is this kind of just reinforcing, and then going into Q2? I know Mike's got a couple of notes here as well.
Lavell, as far as Q2 is concerned, and you're going to blink and boom, it's going to be here. The economics of community and the investor value creation. Talk on that point.
So really, it's the same. It's really kind of the same thing. So, for example, one of the things that we're taking is that, as we did before, we looked at traditional media advertisement. We said, hey, you know what? They're doing it wrong. So we kind of did the same thing for financial scale. So payment processing is something that's going to be a pretty big thing. And to understand that, you see this model that's, in our opinion, flawed. Merchants charge 2-3% tax on everything. And we can make money by buying that, but also making it more efficient. So our plan is to replace those expensive layers, install a blockchain rail that will settle for a fraction of that. And then what we're doing at that point is we're making an efficient way for people to transact money. Again, first conversation we had when Venmo and everybody was, kind of shocked of that. And all those things were new. So we're kind of taking that. And I think the importance from like an investor standpoint is, while this will be more efficient, the Visas and the MasterCards, they operate in the multi-trillions. So even if we captured well under 1% of that volume, we would generate a very significant amount. But more so, again, starting with the community, we're making it more efficient to work.
Lavell, it's occurring to me, we've talked with you before about how you are meeting the customer where they're at. You're meeting this Gen Z where they are. And it's not only where they are, but where they are safe and comfortable and they trust. And they don't even know, like if I go to Amazon, I'm searching for something, but they don't even know the things they want until they see the people in the community. They're like, yeah, I need that. Or, because they're trusting their community. I mean, that's got to be part of the strategy here, right?
It's the most valuable part. I love your questions because they really focus on really what we're trying to do. Like, people, businesses, I don't think they give enough value. And again, that's why I started with that. And I said, hey, I think I wrote a LinkedIn something before that said, the most undervalued asset class is that community. And just like you said, we start with the trust. We start with what they do every day. We put all those pieces together And because we were able to do that successfully, we have more engagement than any other brand for Gen Z. We have more interaction than any other brand for Gen Z. And obviously, you take those things, if you give your community what they want first, those easily translate into revenue models that you can build off of.
We've talked about the ADD of big retail in the past a little bit. And these are, by the way, I wish I could coin these things because they're so good. And I'll be stealing them from Lavell for the next 15 years, as long as I'm still on television. But there's this sort of rent-to-own crisis that you've talked about in the past, whereby you guys are a media tech firm that's sort of engineered a way to own attention rather than rent attention. Talk about that, because I think that's really important for the smallest businesses and the biggest businesses alike.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So what I meant by that is that, people are content with, renting out, paying large sums of money to say, okay, this is what we're going to get, and this is the ROI we want. We're going to spend that. And what we kind of say is, all right, we don't really have to do that. We give them a home, we give everything to the users that are there. So if you just eliminate that cost of having to rent and, say, hey, can you give you this for you to do that? If they're already happy there, you've eliminated marketing, a lot of the costs that are inherent. And one of the reasons why we had such a large footprint is because that's what we did when we first started. We didn't have a large marketing team. We were a startup company, but we really gave them ownership and said, hey, this is yours. And soon we were ahead of everyone else because with no marketing, nothing, completely organic.
Well, and that's just one of your competitive advantages. I mean, you're a company that's got so many competitive advantages. And I think the other piece of this, too, that we have to talk about is that your competitive advantage with the House of Doge and so on and so forth, this brings you into the large financial model and the large financial networks, which is, I know, what you guys are gunning for towards the middle to the end of the year, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and I think what we saw there too, it's like, people really have to understand, it's like what we looked at, again, it's the same thing. We looked at efficiency, we looked at flaws in the market, and we looked at giving not just our Gen Z community, but pretty much any consumer a more efficient way to conduct financial transactions. And if you kind of start with that and you say, okay, that makes sense, then everything else kind of adds up. We put together a very strong business plan, but that was the essential goal for doing it. Yeah. And doing that, again, the financial rails we put in there are really about efficiency. The ownership of dealing with having people having ownership and fixed ownership and like sports teams that they wouldn't have anywhere else. Same thing with our community. Our community for Gen Z, we're able to have experiences that were only limited to like professional gamers and people like that. And we said, no, let's give that to everyone. Let's give them their own platform. So now we're taking that same thing and saying, okay, hey, you know what? You can have access to sports teams, to engagement, to that type of stuff. You can also be able to conduct transactions that are much more efficient and that are just smarter. And you give them their own entire ecosystem there. You really create that. You create your own ecosystem by doing that.
Howie Font and Lavell for
Oh my God.
Are these two guys in the same ticket?
Forget it.
Are you kidding me? I'm throwing a super PAC for these guys.
Lavell Malloy, CEO, co-founder, Bragg House, ticker symbol TBH. We need more and more of you on this show. Lavell, thank you so much for your time.